Hey gang, I got an offer for you today from LinkedIn. As business to business marketers, your needs are unique. B2B buying cycles are long and your customers face incredibly complex decisions. Isn't it time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you? LinkedIn ads empower marketers with solutions for you and your customers. LinkedIn ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful environment. On LinkedIn, you have direct access to build relationships with decision makers. Of the 875 million users on the network, 180 million are senior level executives. 10 million are C-level executives. You will also be able to drive results with targeting and measuring with their tools built specifically for B2B. And best of all, they work. Audiences exposed to brand messages on LinkedIn are 6 times more likely to convert. LinkedIn ads also rank #1 for security, community, and ad experience as part of the Business Insider's Digital Trust Study. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get a $100 credit. It's a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. It's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. Entrepreneurs Enigma is a podcast for the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. It's about the wins and the fails that we all face being entrepreneurs, and how we learn from adversity. Every week I talk to a different entrepreneur with a story to tell. I'm Seth Goldstein. Come with me on the journey. This is Entrepreneurs Enigma. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Entrepreneurs Enigma podcast. I'm Seth. I am here with a friend of mine, David Jasse. He is a video strategist, a video extraordinaire, videographer extraordinaire, I should say. He has Emmys to prove it and the videos to prove it. If you go to dmjstudios.net, you can see all his amazing videos. They're incredible. It's like watching HBO, but he does for-profits, he does non-profit videos. He has been doing this for a very long time. He's had stints at CBS, Fox, CNN, MTV, and I'm sure a bunch of other places, which we can get into as well. David, how are you, buddy?
Thank God. Terrific. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you on. This is so much fun. So you are the proprietor, the chief bottle washer of DMJ Studios up in New York, Long Island. And so tell me a little about this. How did you find your way into video? What's your origin story?
Well, actually, in college, I went to school for engineering. And then one morning at the cafeteria, there's this woman half asleep. And I said, Nira, why are you so tired? She said, I was up all night editing for the university newspaper, the photographs. And I was like, really? After we had a conversation, I found out that I could be a photographer for the university newspaper. Then I moved up to assistant editor. And then I became director of photography on the
Oh, wow.
Statesman, the University of Stony Brook newspaper, which put out 20,000 issues 3 times a week.
Oh,
And then
wow.
and then I got a column like the Inquiring Photographer. And then as college moved on, I did college calendars, the women of Stony Brook, the men of Stony Brook.
Love it.
So that got me started in my career in
In
photography.
visuals, yeah.
And then I worked one day in a photographer's office and I decided it wasn't for me. And then I moved into video, which is a story in of itself.
Oh, I'm sure. So you've been doing this for a while. We're not gonna go into how long because that usually dates people and people don't like to always reveal their age. But how's it been? What's it like working for the big media corporations versus working for yourself?
This is an entrepreneur show. And if I'm
Yeah.
talking to entrepreneurs, I'm going to tell them about my experience. And I think
Yeah.
the way I did it is the way it should be done. So I got my start at CNN, MTV, CBS, Current Affair, video fashion, a lot of programs. And to summarize what I'm trying to say is work for somebody first,
Mhm.
learn the ropes before you go out on your own. So everybody asked me very often, why aren't you working for them anymore? I don't think that was ever the intention. It was
Mhm.
training. And Ted Turner used to say, we're training you that, you should be paying us. And we all felt that way. MTV is also very similar, where they throw you in the fire and you get amazing experience and training. Now, when you work on a client's video, sometimes it'll take 2, 3 weeks to put out a product, maybe even longer. When you work in the news business, and I think it's great training ground for any entrepreneur or anyone who wants to be in this business, you put out a package a day, you put out a story a day. So we
Wow.
were churning out content daily, and it was an amazing experience. And I was a cameraman, then an engineer, then an editor, then a producer. So I got my training on the job.
That's awesome. You get paid, probably not a whole lot, but you got paid to learn, which is the way to do it. And
Oh,
you can only learn so
fantastic.
much in college until you have to apply it. Like when I was a journalist, I went to J school at Delaware, and everything I learned at J school was great background, but they had to reteach me when I went out into the real world. Like how the real world works is not how they teach you in journalism school. That's just fundamentals.
I'm very biased, once again, like we all are,
Yeah.
based on our own experience. And when I told you a few minutes ago that I worked one day in photography and then I had enough, I signed up for a video school,
Mhm.
and I didn't think the video school was very good, but the internship that I took was fantastic. That was working with Howie Rose, who's now famous for the New York Mets. It was
Yeah.
sports night with Howie Rose, and I was cameraman over there on Monday nights for a game. But the internship was fantastic. The school was terrible. I dropped out of the school closed. I kept
Oh,
the
wow.
internship. Through a friend, I got a job at CNN at 5:30 in the morning,
Oh,
and
wow.
that's for $5 an hour. And as I was progressing in my career later on, I went to trade schools for editing,
Yeah.
meaning a lot of the software out there is very user friendly.
Yeah.
However, if you don't take lessons, you're missing all the shortcuts and you're missing the brilliance behind the machine. So, for
Yes.
me, and what I recommend people, especially in this field, is work on the job, get on the job. And then once you're in it and you're using it, you do need to have continuing education, whether that's
Always.
online, in Mentor, or in person.
Oh, always. I remember when left journalism, went into web design full time, I went back to school. I knew how to do web design, but I'm like, I needed some fundamentals behind me because otherwise all my websites are going to look like they're from 1998 when I started doing web design, not 2007, which people are like, that's not a whole long time. Well, internet years, that's decades in style and stuff like that. So I thank God I went back to school and took more classes and whatnot. So moving forward in your career, so you worked in house for a while. So what made you jump into entrepreneurship?
Well, for me, I think right from the beginning, it was not a job. It
Mhm.
was a major client. CNN
Mm.
was a major client. And I used to work 5:30 to 1:30.
Oh,
And
jeez.
then I took freelance work from 1:30 in the afternoon or 2, whatever, till I don't remember, 6:30 at night. So that's when I started freelancing for
Yeah.
MTV. I started freelancing for a cooking show. And when I was at CNN, I actually sat down next to Nikki Glasser, who was a fantastic mentor, and I edited the fashion program
Oh,
for a
wow.
year. And he would say, "Can't you see it's a frame off or 2 frames off?" I thought he was crazy, but that's where I learned my trade. So
Yeah.
after work, 1:30, I went to work for another company, like I said, other companies. One of them was Video Fashion, and they
Oh,
used to give me all the tapes from Paris, London, Milan, and the keys to the place, and they'd say, "Here, make shows."
oh, wow.
Same thing happened with my other client, which was What's Cooking with Burt Wolf, who to this day, God bless him, is still making TV. I just spoke him to the other day.
Oh,
They
that's
did the
awesome.
same thing. They said, "Here are the tapes, make us a show." And so I filled up
Trial.
my
Wow.
afternoons with What's Cooking with Burt Wolf, with MTV, and with Video Fashion. And I got to the point where my CNN client was really taking too much of my time, had already worked there. There was only a limited amount of money I could make. I was making more money in the afternoon. So I left the morning job, and my new 3 clients took over my day.
Became your main hustle.
Yeah. So
I hear that
that's how
so
I
many
did it.
times. I hear that so
And
many times. That's what it is. People side hustle and that eventually takes over the main hustle. And then they're like, wow, okay, I can do this for myself. Fantastic. And I always recommend that too. I didn't. I jumped headfirst into entrepreneurship directly right in, and I was like, but in hindsight, it was to get a job. It was to get the experience to get the job, to get the experience to get the job. But in the long run, 15 years later, I'm still doing it myself. So
And
sometimes,
if we rewind back to when I was younger, I didn't think about this stuff for a long time until you said, this is the subject, entrepreneurialism. So I
Yeah.
said to myself, when did I start? So I was doing body work on cars.
Oh,
I
wow.
was working at the flea market. I worked for my father in his hardware store. So I think when you're brought up with some
Mhm.
jobs and some working, and I remember sitting at the flea market counting the money at the end of the day. I remember when I was an hourly editor after CNN at work. And how could you work so long? I know how I worked so long. This was 25 years ago, and I was getting $35 an hour. I was multiplying the hours by the hourly wage when I was walking back to Penn Station at 10 o'clock at night, and all was good. And I carry
Exactly.
all this philosophy into the people
Mhm.
who work for us now, where if you're being compensated, compensating fairly,
Yeah.
work is good. There are so many things to being a good boss, but one of them is paying people. Because I remember walking home from work, and no matter how late it was, if I was making good money, it was
It was
very
worth it.
helpful.
It was worth it. Yeah, absolutely, and I feel like that's what a lot of people don't realize is that pay people what they're worth, you're gonna get 10 times back because they're gonna love their job, they're gonna like working with you, and that combined with being a good boss, being a nice person, and being kind and all that, and being a mentor, but also paying them a reasonable wage. And I feel like nowadays more than ever, people are realizing that they need to make a living wage getting when they get out of school. Yeah, pay their dues a little bit, but like when I was a journalist, I was getting paid what was it, $21,000 a year. But then I sit back and I look at that and I'm like, okay, that was nothing, even for what was it, 2004 to 2006. But then I realized I'm getting paid so much more with on the ground training instead of going back for a master's degree in theoretical journalism or whatever you want to call it. I'm getting paid something to learn the trade, which I love, and I to this day I still use. I'm doing podcasting. I'm asking questions and all that. So, here's a question for you: what is the best thing in your mind being an entrepreneur?
I'll tell you, it comes naturally for me. And I haven't worked for somebody for many years. So this is just who I am and what I do. But I would guess the answer is your time is your own. I think that's the most important thing. But I also have the kind of brain that when you take all these business classes, they call it the next shiny object. I think some of us have we were born a certain way where all these ideas keep popping into
Mhm,
our head. And we have to, in fact, focus. The challenge
mhm.
is to pick one and to do something that's reasonable because all the
Yeah,
ideas are coming. So I guess other people are born more with either a love for one subject or a different mentality. For me, it's always been how many different things can I do?
yeah.
What could I tell you?
But it's fun. That's what I love about entrepreneurship. We're gonna take a quick break, hear from our sponsors, and get right back to the show.
Hey there, it's Jason with the Marketing Podcast Network. Real quick, I want to make sure you know that the world's leading B2B Marketing Expo is returning to the Los Angeles Convention Center on March 21st and 22nd. It's high time we got back together to learn, see the latest technologies and solutions, and network, right? Join thousands of marketing professionals just like you to learn from over 250 industry expert speakers, educational masterclasses, and over 300 exhibitors. And this year, your ticket also gets you into the Sales Innovation Expo and the Marketing and Advertising Expo. So it's like 3 conferences in one. It's March 21st and 22nd at the Los Angeles Convention Center. Go to b2bmarketingexpo.us to register. That's b2bmarketingexpo.us. The Marketing Podcast Network is a proud partner of the B2B Marketing Expo for 2023. We'll see you in LA.
What keeps you up at night?
The ideas. And whether it's 2 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning, that's usually when all the ideas keep flowing and coming. The important thing for me to do is jump on my phone and send myself an email to look at in the morning with a list of 25 things which I want to do. I think it helps me go back to sleep, and I
Mhm.
pray the first thing in the morning. But if I wake up beforehand with a million ideas,
Yeah,
we once did an educational video on prayer, and the
yeah.
rabbi suggested that. He said, you need a paper and pencil, get it off your head so you can concentrate. that's what I do, whether it happens in the middle of the night or before prayers. I write it all down,
Mhm.
and then I look at it later on.
I can only imagine how hard praying would be with all these ideas flowing if they weren't written down first.
It still is, because when you're praying, you're most relaxed, especially
Yeah.
on Saturday, on the Sabbath,
Yeah.
when you're really chilled, when you're not doing any work.
And you're not supposed to be writing down stuff too.
That's when all the good ideas come. That's
Oh, it always
really
happens
when
that
you're
way, yeah.
chilled, when you're relaxed.
So what is the most important thing to carry with you all of the time?
I'm a huge fan of Anthony Robbins, and Anthony Robbins teaches it over and over, the 3 S's of success. There's
Mhm.
strategy, there's story, and there's state. And you might
Mm.
think the strategy is the most important thing, because without a good strategy, you're not going to get it done. And it is very important. And you should get mentors and you should read books. And success leaves clues, and you need to learn strategies. However, it's number 3, it's not number 1. Number 2 is story. If you don't
Mhm.
have a good story, you're never going to get to your strategy. There are good parts and bad parts of all of us. And when you have that negative story going through your head, your limiting beliefs, you're not going to be able to implement your strategies. So you need to have the good energy and the good questions flowing through your head and your good story. So, how do you get to that good story? By being in the proper emotional state. So, emotional state is number 1. So, what I
Yes.
keep in mind is my emotional state. And there's many ways to affect your emotional state. One way is sleeping right and eating and exercise, very important. The next one, which is critical, is motion equals emotion. A depressed
Mm.
person will be very low moving and low breathing. An exciting person will be up. So any kind of exercise that you could do or motions to get you excited is very important. Then the next thing Anthony Robbins taught me was we have the most powerful brain known to man. And whatever question you ask yourself, you'll be able to answer it. If you ask yourself negative, endless loop questions, you're going to get into a very unresourceful state.
Yeah.
Like, why does this always happen to me? And if you ask yourself positive questions, what's good
Mhm.
about this? What can I learn about this? You'll be in a resourceful state. So,
Love it.
to answer your question now that I gave all the lessons, what do I carry around with me all
Yes.
the time? The most important thing is your emotional state. If you're not
Love
in
it.
a good emotional state, you're not going to tell a good story to yourself or to anyone else. And you'll never implement all these strategies that you learn, you study, you ask.
Mhm.
You know what you're supposed to do. Why isn't it getting done? Because you're in a bad mood and you're giving a bad story and you're in a bad state and you never
Yeah.
get to your brilliant strategy.
Love that. So, Dave, where can people find you online? Where's your main watering hole?
dmjstudios.net.
And you're also on LinkedIn. You're very prolific on there, I see as well. So you can always look up David Jasse, Jasse. I don't know how any other way you would spell that actually, so I didn't have to spell that out. But anyhow, I spelled it out. It'll be in the show notes as well, where you can just click on it and go follow David over there. Great stuff. Oh, and we almost failed to mention you have a bunch of Emmys behind you. What are those
Well,
for?
I was part of an Emmy Award winning team like once or twice. My team that I've since brought on over the years, that's Dan Galway. He has about 15 Emmys,
Oh
mostly
wow.
mostly for sports programs.
Yeah.
And I want to give another entrepreneurial tip before we go.
Yes, please.
You don't want to be the smartest one in the room. You want to
Mhm.
hire people who are smarter than you. Anybody who says nobody does it as good as me and I have to do everything, nobody sells as good as you, nobody
Ugh,
blah, blah,
yeah.
blahs as good as you, I'd say not really. You need to keep looking, find the rock stars. That's how
Yes.
you grow. When you do it by yourself, you go faster. When you do it with others, you go further. And it's
Love it.
very, very important because we get used to doing it the same old way. And there are people out there who are in the fast lane going much quicker. And you got to look for them and you got to catch them and you got to hire them. And that's how you grow.
Brilliant. I think that's a great place to end. David, thank you so much for being on the program. This is such a joy. And we'll see everyone next week. That was a great show. Hey, if you're enjoying Entrepreneurs Enigma, please give us a review on the podcast directory of your choice. We're on all of them. And these reviews really help others find the show. Also, if you're getting value from the show and want to buy me a coffee, go to the show notes and click on the link to help me stay awake while I bring you more great episodes to your ears. That's in the show notes, and I look forward to the next episode. Take care, guys. Goldstein Media hopes you have enjoyed this episode. This podcast is one of the many great shows on the MPN Marketing Podcast Network.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christopher Hines hosts a great podcast called Founder Success Methods. Chris, tell us what these fine folks will get out of listening.
You'll learn how to really grow your startup and get the basic strategies to build a successful company. We show you all the details and all the strategies that you just can't find on Google, YouTube, or even other podcasts.
Ooh, we're going to be lined up for this one. Where can people subscribe?
You can search for the podcast Founder Success Methods wherever you listen to podcasts, or find me on Twitter at Chris Podcasting.
Or go to marketingpodcasts.net. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.